All and welcome to the November 7th Des Moines Area MPO Transportation Technical Committee. We do have an agenda that was out and submitted, and I'm looking for a motion and a second on that agenda.
This is Rudy with Waukee. I'll move to accept the agenda.
Sturms, I'll second.
Thank you, Rudy and Madeline. This being a virtual meeting, we're not going to ask for votes in the affirmative, but we will just see if there's anybody who has any objections or abstentions to each motion. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there anybody who opposes? Hearing none, we'll consider that approved. Also circulated was the approval of the meeting minutes from our October meeting. If anybody has any questions or notes, I'll entertain a motion in a second on the meeting minutes.
Louise, this is Tom Blanc, City of Des Moines. I did not attend that meeting, so I'd like to abstain from this motion.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a motion and a second on approving the meeting minutes?
This is Rudy with Waukee. I'll move the motion to accept the minutes.
Second. May second.
Thank you. And so are there any nays to the accepting the meeting minutes of October? Hearing none, we'll mark Tom down as an abstention. Next up, we have a presentation about Capitol Crossroads. Dylan, I think you're going to kick us off.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. We have with us today Katie Patchett from Capitol Crossroads, and we've asked her to just give an update of what Capitol Crossroads has been up to over the last year or so. I think people are probably familiar with Capitol Crossroads. It's been around in the community now for a while. And as Katie will probably explain, they've updated the vision here in the last year or so. And so I'll turn it over to Katie to let us know what they've been up to, how this affects communities and the MPO. So Katie.
Thank you so much, Dylan, and to you, Louise. I really appreciate the opportunity to join this group. It's great to see some familiar faces and names, and also really great to see folks who I have not yet met. And I hope that we do have the opportunity to meet face to face and continue to collaborate. So as Dylan mentioned, I am the executive director of Capitol Crossroads. I started this January in my role, a week after the third iteration of Capitol Crossroads, which is called the Roadmap to Opportunity and Prosperity for All, or Roadmap for short, was launched. So we are almost a year in to this 16-year regional vision plan, and we really hit the ground running. But I did want to take a step back just for a moment to make sure everybody was on the same page and give some background on Capitol Crossroads. It was formed a little more than a decade ago when a broad cross-section of community leaders from public, private, nonprofit, education, and social sectors came together to form a collaborative effort to launch a vision plan for Central Iowa, originally viewed as a 5-year vision plan. And they really wanted to work together across sectors and across the Central Iowa region, so Polk, Dallas, and Warren counties, to identify and then address the current and future trends that were going to have the greatest impact on folks who live, work, and play in Central Iowa. So Capitol Crossroads is that regional collaboration of multi-sector stakeholders. We also serve as a forum to unite and connect diverse stakeholders and really unite their efforts behind a few select issues, and also provide that comprehensive vision for leaders and organizations across Central Iowa to align their efforts and really kind of focus in so we can maximize our impact. I did want to mention a couple of things. Capitol Crossroads is not a direct service provider. So we're not necessarily out in the community providing a specific product to a specific population of people. We really do more of our creating impact and bringing folks together by creating that shared vision and going out into the community and communicating that, but also convening those diverse groups of influencers in order to elevate some of our ideas and come up with opportunities for the region to continue to grow. We coordinate efforts across communities. We communicate works in progress, uplift the work of our partner organizations that are really the boots on the ground in the community day to day, celebrate successes, and we we also help by catalyzing new initiatives when our community partners say that that's where they need help. So we can go in and add capacity to those initiatives or start new initiatives all on our own. The other thing I want to mention is that Capital Crossroads truly is the community's plan. The community informed it through a very robust planning process. There was a lot of diverse feedback provided through interviews, written feedback, focus groups. There was also research and data collection in a robust way that took place over the course of a year. And then just a lot of different engagement with leaders across sectors to make sure that the roadmap was truly reflective of what the community was saying. Here are the biggest issues and opportunities that we need to address, so Central Iowa continues to be a place where families and businesses can thrive. We can advance to the next slide. So one of our superpowers is this diverse group of volunteer leaders from across sectors who have come together to say that they believe in the power of regionalism, they believe in the power and value of regional collaboration across sectors, and they believe in our vision plan and want to work together and engage the community in order to move it from a vision to reality. I'm constantly impressed by this group of people. You can see here we have a lot of different folks involved in this initiative. They bring their own diverse perspectives, unique lived experiences, different areas of expertise to the table. So not only are they serving as leaders and liaisons to the community in order to activate the roadmap, but they also help inform our strategies and get us connected to the community partners and members and organizations that we need to engage in order to make sure that our work is well informed and that we're really addressing the needs that the community is raising up, and that we're slotting into those initiatives and those areas in a way that makes sense. So the regional council is who we're led by. It's a 44-member council. We are thankful to be co-chaired by a really great group of leaders. We have Dan Houston from Principal Financial, Dr. Ian Roberts from Des Moines Public Schools, Mayor Courtney Clark from Waukee, Ben McLean from Rouen, and then the late and amazing Terry Caldwell Johnson, who really just did so much to help get Capital Crossroads to where it is today, inform our ethos, inform our strategies. So she continues to inspire our work. Of course, you can see Des Moines MPO right there in the center column. We're very thankful to have Dylan on our regional council. And then we also have Amanda Wonke from DART, which is really great. And Luis, thank you for stepping in on some of the occasions when Amanda is tied up otherwise. So you can see that this regional council is also reflective of the priorities that are listed in the roadmap. We want to make sure that we have that group of folks who are going to be part of these conversations, helping to strategize and address some of our major regional challenges and opportunities. And of course, transportation is part of that conversation. We can move to the next slide. So as I mentioned, there was a lot of robust planning efforts that went into creating this roadmap. And primarily that involved community input. And then there was also a long phase of professional data and research collection, and then a lot of different interviews and engagements with diverse stakeholder groups who have been involved in Capital Crossroads in the past, just to talk about where things are going well, what we can do better, what we need to be looking at in terms of the outlook towards 2040 across the 3-county footprint that we serve. So just a lot of conversations over the course of the year. And from that, there were consistent issues that continued to bubble to the top, the things that kept getting called out consistently, regardless of the audience, as the critical areas where we must focus in order to continue to create economic opportunity, improve on community vitality, and improve on quality of life in Central Iowa for everyone who lives and works and plays here. So 2 of those that ultimately were called the critical outcomes, and 2 of those weave through the entire plan because they are so important and they really touch on every component and every topic that we're working on. The first of which is regionalism. And when we say regionalism, we mean it not only as a strategy, but also as an outcome. So we want to increase collaboration across community lines in order to improve communication, to learn from each other, share best practices, and address a lot of these challenges and opportunities that we're all facing as a region rather than operating in silos, and then come out on the other end a stronger region for it. We know that we're better when we're working together, and that we have opportunity to create greater impact when we work together. The second of those is equity and inclusion. So knowing that we have experienced significant population shifts in recent years, knowing that that diversity will continue to grow in central Iowa, that's a strength. We really want to embrace that. We know that the economy does better when it's inclusive, when everybody has an opportunity to participate fully. So we need to make sure that when we are devising strategies and we're addressing issues, that we are using an equity and inclusion lens in order to make sure that we are creating sustainable and equitable pathways to success and well-being for everyone in our 3-county footprint. The other 4 critical outcomes that kept bubbling to the top are placemaking. So really creating that vibrant community space, a place where folks can feel connected and engaged in the community and create a unique sense of place in central Iowa. Workforce housing is a big one, not only housing that meets demand and is aligned with regional employment, but is near jobs and amenities, including transportation. Job growth, of course, we want to make sure that we have solid career pathways and that everybody has a chance to participate in the job market and economy. And then education. And when we talk about education, we really take a cradle to career approach. So we're saying childcare, pre-K, all the way through career pathways. We can go to the next slide. So if the critical outcomes are where Capital Crossroads Roadmap has identified we need to get to, those are the areas where we know we need to address in order to continue to grow. The 4 cornerstones are meant to focus our efforts into a few specific areas and inform our goals and the work that we're doing in order to reach those critical outcomes. So the cornerstones are really our inputs. You might be familiar with previous iterations of Capital Crossroads. That structure was more of the 10 capitals that kind of informed the work and created teams. We did get feedback, or Capital Crossroads did receive feedback that that might be too many priorities. So in order to focus efforts and maximize impact, the focus areas were condensed down into these cornerstones. So you can see we have economic opportunity and prosperity. That's really where we're going to be focusing on job growth, making sure everyone has a chance to participate, and maintaining our leadership in areas like agriculture and manufacturing. Community and cultural connections is really a lot of that placemaking. That's where we're talking about cultural celebrations, artistic and culinary expression, community festivals, parks and rec, creating spaces that feel unique to us, and really creating a community where people can feel excited to be and proud of and connected and seen. Youth investment. So again, that's really a lot of the education areas, the cradle to career approach that we have there, addressing those 3 key areas. And then thriving neighborhoods, which is probably most relevant to the issues that the MPO deals with and is focused on. So that's not only workforce housing in thriving neighborhoods, so the infrastructure where people are living, but also making sure that those neighborhoods are built sustainably so that we have good water quality. Those neighborhoods are built to last. They are also built in a way where folks can be healthy, and they are near amenities and mobility, transportation, whether it's public transport or trails. We want to make sure that people have options for transportation. That's a critical component of creating neighborhoods and spaces where people can thrive. And I will say too, you might notice that these issues are they intersect quite a bit. That was intentional. So if we're working on an issue like workforce housing, which we are in the first 2-year sprint of this roadmap, we know that that's not going to exist in a vacuum, and we're only going to be talking about workforce housing. Inevitably, we will also be talking and addressing issues like transportation and job growth and education and creating a vibrant community, because that issue intersects very strongly with each of those other challenges. We can go to the next slide. So also in looking at the 4 cornerstones and the 6 critical outcomes, we're the communities plan. We're always going to have a lot of different perspectives and priorities represented because we represent a broad swath of people in different sectors. But we also want to be very mindful of continuing to kind of drill down and focus efforts so we're making an impact. So even though the 4 cornerstones were condensed down from the 10 capitals, there's still a lot there. So we wanted to take one more step and say, for the first 2 years of this roadmap that goes out towards 2040, we're really going to take a closer look and focus efforts on 2 areas. The first of which is education, and the second of which is workforce housing, where I'll focus a little bit more for this conversation today. And when we talk about workforce housing, we are doing most of our work through the continuation of the Here We Grow collaboration with Polk County Housing Trust Fund. I'm sure folks on this call are familiar with that. Here We Grow, a couple of years ago, did a tour across, I think, 12 different communities in central Iowa, meeting with local government leaders and staff in order to really drill down on their perspective on where are the gaps and opportunities in workforce housing, what are some of the challenges, how can Capital Crossroads as a regional collaboration help create new initiatives or bring folks to the table in a neutral space in order to address some of these challenges. So we're continuing our work there. And when we're talking about our goals with workforce housing, we're making sure that there's an adequate supply of workforce housing that meets the local demand, that the jobs mix is also reflective, or the housing mix is reflective of the jobs mix, so people have opportunity to attain housing that aligns with wages, and also that everyone has equitable access to housing opportunities in central Iowa as well. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to just give a couple quick examples of Capital Crossroads in action. We are out in the community every single week talking about these different issues. And I chose workforce housing here because it so directly intersects with transportation. And inevitably, when we're out in the community talking about workforce housing, we're also talking about transportation as an issue that we need to be addressing and working together on. So a few of the different areas where we're addressing this issue is, bottom line, education and advocacy. We are out in the community every single week. We're in our newsletter and on social media in meetings like this one, where we are lifting up workforce housing as one of the top priorities and regional priorities in central Iowa that requires multi-sector collaboration in order to make progress. We're working really hard to bring different stakeholders to the table in neutral spaces in order to educate about the importance of this issue and the challenges here, and advocate primarily at the local level. I know that several folks on this call have probably already been on the receiving end of those conversations, just about how important this is, and to talk about how it does intersect with other community issues like transportation. Whether we're in a presentation with the Mid-Iowa Area League of Governments, or we're presenting at an uplift presentation about housing, inevitably transportation comes up as a systems level issue that we need to be mindful of, that, we can build more housing, but if it's not near transportation, then we're not fully addressing the problem. So really, there's a lot of intersections there. We also are out in the community working with different partners on studies and trying to create new data for local decision makers to be better informed, and to kind of take some of that on ourselves. So we know that you're all busy, and we can provide that information to you in order to have strategic conversations and make decisions moving forward on solutions. So we're not only doing a study this year with Polk County Housing Trust Fund on where affordable housing exists in Polk, Dallas, and Warren County to make sure that everybody has that same information. But we're also looking next year on doing a in-depth research analysis on land available across our 3-county footprint for potential affordable housing development, which will be really interesting to see. And we're partnered with Wells Fargo on that as well. We're also doing a lot of conversation and advocacy around zoning and land use reforms. Everybody on this call is well aware that those local ordinances can have quite an impact on folks' ability to, or developers' ability to come into a community, to develop housing. And between, the different challenges there, whether it's a zoning ordinance around longevity or safety or quality. There are a lot of different areas there where we can take a step back and look at and see if it's not necessarily directly tied to longevity or safety. Could it be unintentionally creating a barrier to more affordable housing development that is developed swiftly and without a whole lot of barriers? So we're trying to bring together municipal leaders and developers to have those conversations and see where we might be able to make adjustments in order to improve workforce housing development locally. We've already been in front of multiple city councils to talk about this issue. We've been to Clive and Urbandale. We have a couple opportunities coming up on the horizon. We're happy to come present to communities as well, if that's helpful. We're also talking about a model code for workforce housing development. We're working very closely with Hubble Realty, Polk County Housing Trust Fund on that, and have met with 4 different cities across the metro area to get their perspective on what something like that could look like in order to speed the process and cut through some of the red tape on both sides that can be a challenge, to see if we can speed up the process for developing workforce housing. And then also just bringing together developers to have conversations about where are some of the challenges and opportunities, and how can Central Iowa work more effectively together across sectors in order to address this challenge. And also talking about economic development incentives, talking to municipal leaders about some of the resources that are already out there that they can leverage in order to incent developers to come into the community to work on workforce housing. And again, I will just repeat that transportation is integral to all of these community conversations. When we're out there talking to people, we will often say things along the lines of, we know that we have to have housing in order to have jobs. And if everybody's working towards economic development, we can't have housing get in the way of people finding jobs in our community. Building on that, we also know that if transportation gets in between housing and jobs, we're also not going to be able to grow our local economy, that people aren't going to have as much of an opportunity to participate as fully in the economy if they don't have transportation options. So we recognize that as an integral part in this conversation, not only with housing, but also with education and with job growth and with community development in general. We can go forward. This is also just a good example of Capital Crossroads out in the community, talking about all of these issues, making sure that we're advocating and bringing people into these efforts. So we're out there, we've developed the regional vision with community input. Now we're out there in the community on a week-to-week basis, sharing that regional vision, talking about collaboration, regionalism, all of these different opportunities that we have, and working across sectors in order to make progress. We are engaging in grassroots advocacy on a weekly basis on our cornerstone issues. So you can see in these different photographs, you have Brad Anderson from AARP presenting to the Clive City Council in May. You have Dr. Ian Roberts in the bottom right talking to a large group of community leaders about the importance of career pathways and investing in education. And then we also have on the bottom left a panel where both Jay Byers and Alejandro Hernandez from Simpson and Drake respectively presenting on building talent in Iowa and job growth that starts with education as well. So we're just out there in the community uplifting these issues all the time, making sure that we are presenting solutions and opportunities to work together, uplifting our partners' good work, celebrating those wins, and communicating works in progress as well. We can advance. I would be remiss if I did not mention a big thank you to the incredible group of funders that Capital Crossroads has. This is a really good example of the broad support that folks have, whether they're inside our 3-county footprint or outside of our 3-county footprint, folks who believe in the power of regional collaboration and believe in this vision. And we know that these issues that we are working on, whether it's housing, transportation, career pathways, childcare, that they aren't just in the 3 counties that we serve. Their entire state is dealing with these challenges and trying to figure out solutions and ways we can more effectively collaborate and make progress. So we're not operating in silos. We want to work together. And this is a really strong example of folks who believe in that work, support it financially, and have also provided staff time and resources in order to help our efforts have an impact. So we can move forward. So really, collaboration is the heart of what we do. There's some easy ways to get involved. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up for our monthly newsletter and share it with your community. We really try to make a point of including a lot of our partners' efforts in that newsletter and on social media. So you may have seen the different studies and requests for feedback that MPO has put out about safety planning and the future of transportation. We've definitely uplifted those. We try to keep folks informed with what's happening with DART and where they can offer their community input. And then just uplifting, things like the Iowa Bicycle Coalition's, their trails study or their economic impact report. So those are really good opportunities for us to uplift the work that folks on this organization are working on. And if you have ideas, please send those to us. We're happy to include those and use our unique reach and unique network to amplify that message and that work. But also if there's events or other things where Capital Crossroads either should be present to learn or to present or to bring people in, If you want to join one of our work groups to help us develop our strategies, that would be fantastic. So just feel free to reach out to us at CXR staff, or if you go to the next slide, there's also my direct contact information there. So that's my cell phone and my email. And there's a link also to sign up for our newsletter. More than happy to continue the conversation and just appreciate the opportunity to engage this group. I know the work that you're doing is very important. I'm very grateful that we have folks like Dylan and Amanda and others and city leaders on our regional council. We need those voices, not only from the transportation space, but from the local government space to collaborate. We want to work with you. We need you to help inform our efforts. We need you to be sharing what's going on in the community so we can be responsive to that. We're focused on workforce housing and education for the first 2-year sprint, but we have a continuous improvement model. So that's not going to be the sole areas of focus that we stay on through all of 2040. We also know that if there are things happening in the community that we need to pivot in order to address more effectively, that we have the ability to do that as an organization. So we're just eager to continue working with all of you, identifying opportunities for collaboration. We know that as we focus on housing, that transportation is going to be part of that conversation. There are major expenses for families, and they have an effect on whether folks are able to go to work and if they're able to pay for childcare and to engage fully in the workforce. So we'll continue to have these conversations and are open to opportunities and ideas to collaborate with you all as well. So happy to take any questions.
Hey, Katie, this is Tom Block, and I really appreciate the presentation. I just have a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. You indicated that there have been solutions that have been identified. I'm curious, have any of the solutions been implemented or started to be implemented? And if not, is there a timeline of when and what it will take to get them implemented?
Solutions around what specifically?
I don't know. The things you were just talking about. You said there were solutions that have been identified. I'm guessing affordable housing and education.
Yep. So in affordable housing, we have been meeting with different stakeholders all year and have basically identified in those 3 buckets whether it's economic development incentives, zoning and land use reforms, and some of those research studies. Those were the 3 areas where community experts and partners told us they wanted us to focus our efforts, or where we could add to the work that's already happening in the community. So we're doing those studies on where affordable housing exists right now, and then where there's land opportunities that aligns with transportation and housing goals in order to push those out into the community and help folks make more informed decisions and have strategy sessions. We are working with a few different folks on that model code project in order to go back out to communities and hopefully engage city council work sessions in order to kind of pitch them on the concept and see if there's value, and also make sure that they're on the front end of those conversations so the city perspective is represented and it's actually valuable to them. So as we develop the guidelines with municipal and industry perspective, our goal is to go back out into the community and then have hopefully local governments adopt some of those zoning and land use reforms, and also make sure that housing is included in their affordable housing development, workforce housing development is included in their comp plan, so it's prioritized as a region. And then in terms of economic development incentives, we've already done 1 municipal training. We will continue to do those. Those were for East Polk County communities in July. We're hoping to do more of those for different areas in our 3-county footprint. We've also heard some good feedback from community leaders that participated in that training, and in our Mid-Iowa Area League of Governments presentation, that they're now looking at some affordable housing developments that they may not have before. So some of this work and some of these broad issues like housing is slow and kind of hard to quantify, but as an additional added voice to this work and bringing stakeholders together, those are some of the kind of gentle movements that we're working on and already seeing some positive feedback. In the immediate time frame, we're just focused on some of that education and advocacy work. So for housing, we just did a bus tour that had stops in Des Moines, Carlisle, Cumming, and Norwalk for just under 50 community leaders. We had, I think, 6 different cities and 2 counties represented on that, also nonprofit leaders and folks from the industry who joined, just to kind of show them who is needing affordable housing in the community, where it is, some of the challenges to development, some of the challenges that cities are facing. And so that was another immediate and recent example of community engagement and advocacy around this work specifically.
Okay, and one follow-up question on the affordable housing. Is there a price range? What do you consider to be affordable housing in this region?
That's a very good question. And honestly, you're going to get a different answer depending on who you're talking to. We partner very strongly or very closely with Polk County Housing Trust Fund. And I've heard Toby O'Berry, their executive director, say more than once that really they want to make sure that anyone who is working has access to housing. But really for us, we kind of stick to the definition of somewhere between 60 and 120% of area median income, or AMI. I think that's nationally recognized as what affordable housing is. But folks might say, some folks might go down to 30%. Other folks might say it's between 80 and 120%. It's kind of subjective depending on who you're talking to, but really we kind of exist in the space of 60 to 120%. And then we also, in terms of our model,
when you say 60 to 120%, what are you saying there? Are you saying the cost of the home would be 60 to 120% of their income, or?
No, that they're earning between 60 to 120% of the area median income. So it's based on their income.
But I guess I'm a little confused.
I can also
Tom,
say,
I know that we only have limited time on our agenda for this, so maybe you could follow up with Katie and she could probably point you to some resources that you could read up on some of these definitions rather than try to hash it out here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to follow up, Tom.
Other questions, comments?
Katie, this is Madeline Sturms in Pleasant Hill. I just have two quick comments. I guess I'm curious because so many of the outcomes are related to zoning reform, how you're engaging the community development directors or the planners across the metro who are experts in this. As that person for Pleasant Hill, we haven't been involved at all. And so I would love to help participate, to help inform that process and what we can do to help inform and help the decision makers, the elected officials who have limited knowledge and expertise on those areas. So would encourage you to reach out to those groups. And I also am curious how you are taking into context the current legislative environment that we are all operating under that limits cities' abilities to provide incentives to want and encourage growth in order to be able to do any of these objectives, how that is being used and how you're using this as a message that we can't advance the region through these things when we are handcuffed in our ability to want growth.
Yes, Madeline, thank you for both of those questions. In terms of the zoning and that, some of the zoning ordinances and land use ordinances conversations that came up grew from that 12 community tour with municipal leaders and staff that happened, I believe, in 2021 and 2022. Those profiles are published on the Here We Grow website. So that was kind of the beginning of a lot of that conversation. And in our model code conversations, we've met with the community development directors of some of the cities that are represented on our regional council. So Waukee, West Des Moines, and Des Moines, and Clive as well. We met with their longtime community development planners, folks who have expertise in that area, just to get their feedback on the feasibility of some of these issues and where we might be able to address initially to make the greatest impact, and also how receptive folks might be to it. Because we know that, developers and municipal staff have to work together, and they often are coming from a different place. So we're trying to help figure out how we can bring them to the table and collaborate more effectively. So we have been meeting with community development directors. We'd be happy to have that conversation with you as well, Madeline, to bring you in. I know that you have a lot of expertise and that Pleasant Hill is working on a lot of different areas that we're also focused on. So that would be great. Second, with the legislative environment, we're not necessarily a lobbying organization, but we, of course, in all of these conversations we're having with community leaders, those issues continue to come up as challenges. As we talk about regionalism and we talk about collaboration, that the property tax legislation or spending caps, all of those things have come up in conversation. And we know that leaders on our regional council are engaged in having those conversations and are talking to elected officials about the need to make changes there in order to preserve opportunity for us to continue to grow. So that is absolutely something that we're aware of, and we know that our regional council members are out there advocating for change there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any last questions for Katie? Well, Katie, we really appreciate your time in getting us up to speed on the progress that Capital Crossroads has been making. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Next up, I think we have some tip amendments, Zach.
Yes, thank you. We have 4 amendments for you to consider today. The first one is from the Iowa DOT. This is for a project on I-80, just to the west of the West Mixmaster. This has National Highway Performance Program funds attached to it. Those are the federal funds, a little over $2.1 million currently programmed. The reason for this amendment is that they're going to increase the federal aid by more than 30%, so that triggers the amendment process. So the federal aid will go from 2.1 million to a little over 3.2 million. The next 3 projects are all from Polk County. They amended their 5-year program, and so we need to get these projects amended into our tip to match their 5-year program. These next 2 are CMAQ projects for traffic signal improvements. This first one, they were awarded a little over $22,000 in CMAQ funds for various locations throughout the county. And again, we need to add this project into the tip. The next one, also a CMAQ project for some traffic signal improvements, again, at various intersections throughout Polk County. They were awarded a little over $483,000 for this project, and we need to get it added into our tip. And then the last one is a bridge replacement project that the MPO awarded $350,000 in STBG funding to. You can see on the map there the location of this bridge, just kind of in the north and east of Ankeny there. Again, this was STBG money that was awarded from the MPO, and we need to get this project added into our tip so that they can expend those funds. Those are the 4 amendment requests. Happy to take any questions that you have. Otherwise, it's before you for your approval.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions? If not, can I get a motion and a second on the 4 tip amendments as recommended by staff?
Terms, I'll move approval.
Rudy with Waukee, I'll second.
Thank you, Madeline and Rudy. Are there any opposed to approving the 4 tip amendments as presented? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next up, we have a report and vote on mobilizing tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. Staff has been working over the last year to update our long-range transportation plan, Mobilizing Tomorrow. It's one of the documents that we're required to produce from the Federal Highway. Our LRTP schedule is to have this due in November. So the final approval of this document will occur at the Policy Committee meeting this month on November 21st. All the final plan contents has been posted up on the website, with one exception, our Appendix B, which is our travel demand model validation. Our on-call model consultant is currently making some edits to that documentation, and we're hopeful that we'll have that posted on the website here in the next couple days. As a reminder, we talked about this before at past meetings. This was more of a update rather than an overhaul of the plan. Some of the key things that we focused on during this update was just looking at how we could reformat the plan and do a design layout change. So we've done that. We also wanted to focus on cleaning up language and just making it more concise where we could, as well as some content reorganization. The key ones here is that we reorganized the chapters based on transportation mode. That's not how it was in the previous chapter. And we moved those measures and targets that were related to each one of those modes up into each of those chapters. And then also included the state of the system, the existing conditions of the region's transportation system, which was previously in an appendix. We pulled all that information up into those chapters as well. The final thing, and probably what took the most amount of time, was just going back through the plan, updating all the data related to the growth scenario, fiscal analysis, performance measures, things of that nature, making sure that all that data was updated. I will make one note on the growth scenario. We did have a lot of discussion around this, and I just want to point out there were some concerns that were expressed about the growth scenario at the time that we sent that through the committees and approved it. I just want to make a note that we do have time allocated in our budget this next year to look at the growth scenario and kind of address some of those concerns that were expressed. As far as the plan content, there are 4 main chapters in the plan. The first chapter is an introduction, talks about transportation in the region, the history of transportation planning in the region, things of that nature. And then we have the 3 main chapters, as I mentioned before, that are broken out by mode. Chapter 2 focuses on roads and bridges. Chapter 3, bicycle, pedestrian, and transit issues. And then Chapter 4, aviation and freight. Each one of those chapters is structured in a similar format where it looks at the existing conditions, state of the system, moves into the measures and targets related to those modes, and then talks about the fiscal capacity, and then finally includes the list of projects that were submitted in that chapter. As well as those 4 main chapters, we have a number of appendices in the plan. We have 11 of them that kind of cover all of the various different background information, all the methodologies that were used. Anybody who wants to really dig into how the plan was developed, would be the place to go to find all of that information. The MPO does require a 30-day public comment period on our LRTP as part of our public participation plan. The draft plan was released on September 23rd, and we collected public online comment through October 23rd. We also hosted a public open house at the MPO on October 9th. We were able to incorporate the majority of all the comments that we received through that public comment period into the final draft. Most of those comments came from 4 different entities. Des Moines provided comments on a number of the chapters as well as some of the appendices. DART provided feedback on the transit section. Pleasant Hill provided some feedback on some freight issues in Chapter 4. And then we also had some comments from the Freight Roundtable as well, related to transload facilities across the metro, and then adding some more information in on those into Chapter 4 as well. In addition to that, we did get some public comments just from the general public, and those were all incorporated into Appendix G. The comments we received through our online input did not include anything that really required any changes to the plan, but they were documented in that appendix. So the approval of the final draft will fulfill the USDOT's requirement for the MPO to develop an LRTP and update it every 4 years. This will ensure, approving this plan will ensure that the MPO can continue to move forward with the development of all the projects that we have included in our transportation improvement program. The final draft today is before you for your approval to recommend it on to Policy Committee for final approval. Happy to take any questions you have. Otherwise, this item is before you for a vote.
Any questions for Zach? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion in a second to approve the Mobilizing Tomorrow final draft.
This is Rudy with Waukee. I'll move to accept the Mobilize Tomorrow final draft.
May, Clive, second.
Thank you, Jeff and Rudy. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Zach and team, for all your hard work on this.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a report on STBG.
Just a quick update to let you know that the schedule for the 2029 Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, we had that released. So applications will be posted on the MPO website by December 2nd. Those applications will be due back on January 10th. We are giving an additional week for those applications to be submitted based on some feedback we received in the last cycle. The applicant presentations will then follow sometime in February or March of 2025, and the TAP program will follow the same schedule. Just wanted to put those dates on your schedule so that you're aware of them. And we'll have more information sent out to you once those applications are posted.
Any questions for Zach? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Dylan, I think you're going to give us some reminders or some update on the MPO representative selection process.
Yes, thank you. As we end the calendar year, we will start the process to solicit representation for both the technical and policy committees for the calendar year of 2025. We'll send that out by middle of this month. We'll have a meeting next week with our executive committee and kind of do the same thing with them, and then we'll send everything out. For the technical committee, we keep the same process as what the policy committee does. Theirs is a little more complicated because there's an executive committee and so forth. But for the technical committee, there'll be a nominating committee put together that the chair will appoint sometime prior to the February meeting. So really, we can do that at any point, Luis. And then that group will report back, and we'll get those candidates selected probably in February so that they can take over in March. For both the technical and the policy committee, I guess one thing I would advise as you work with your policy members, if you have insight into that, is just, we want to make sure that we get people on the committees that can attend meetings, that are going to care and be involved in the process. That's something we've been trying to improve upon as we've gone through this governance process that I mentioned a couple months ago. So just keep that in mind. We're always looking for more diversity in the committee makeup as well, both on the technical and the policy committee too. So keep those things in mind as you work with your policy commanders and also as you look at your appointments as technical folks to these various committees as well. If there are any questions you might have, please let us know, whether it's now or later on as we get further into the process, but happy to help make sure this is going smooth going forward.
Thank you, Dylan. And will the selection of the nominating committee, will that be an action of the committee?
No, typically the chair can just appoint who those people are.
Okay. Any questions for Dylan? Thank you for those reminders.
Thanks.
Z, we have our upcoming events.
Yes, thank you. You'll find the upcoming events for this month as well as the following months in your agenda packet. But on the slide here, I just highlighted the ones for November. I think kind of 2 webinars of note: systematic safety project selection on November 12th and pedestrian and bicycle level of traffic stress on November 13th. They seemed pretty interesting. And today, up in Ames, the Iowa section of the Institute of Traffic Engineers are having their annual meeting.
Thank you. Next up, we have other non-action items of interest. I think we have a few. Dylan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. As Luis said, we've got a few, so bear with us here. But I wanted to take a moment, as I just referenced, we've gone through a governance process, and we presented on that a couple months ago. Concurrently to that, we were going through a human capital plan as well. And that human capital plan really took us a chance to step back and reassess as we've had some changes among our staff to see, what positions we need, what does our org chart look like, how do we be competitive in terms of salaries and so forth. So we have had a few changes going on internally, and we will be adding some staff here shortly. But one thing I wanted to note, because you're going to start hearing more from him on maybe some things you haven't in the past, is Gunnar has been had a title change going from public affairs manager to now planning and public affairs manager. So he's going to take on some additional duties in making sure that the planning aspects of what we do in our work program are all moving forward and working with the rest of the planning staff to, best serve you as we go through the work that we do. I also want to take a moment too to say, as people might or might not be aware, Zach Young has been a contract employee for the last year, and he's got a contract that goes through the end of this calendar year. So we'll have a meeting with our executive and policy committee members here in the next couple of weeks to extend that contract out a little bit. But we'll be probably having some additional staff work with Zach on some of the things that he's been doing. So just a heads up that you might see some different names of staff on things like the TIP and the funding subcommittee process or the SDBG funding process, because we are working on that transition of duties as we move forward. if there's questions, concerns, anything about any of this, please feel free to reach out. We want to make sure that we have as little hiccup to the process that we go through as possible, so we're not affecting what you do and the funding you receive and so forth. So bear with us, but we're going to do our best to make sure it's a smooth transition all the way around.
Any questions for Dylan? Thanks for that update. So I believe that the Public Affairs and Planning Manager has an update as well.
Thanks, Luis. What Dylan really means is you're going to hear more from me. I'm going to be calling you and asking you questions. So thank you. The update I have for you is to report back. A while ago, we sent a survey out asking your interest in involvement in a few committees based around projects. The response was pretty minimal. And so what I want to communicate back to you today is you're just going to be hearing from us, kind of recruiting you around these specific conversations as we move through these projects. So don't be surprised if we're trying to pull you into conversations based on these projects. And that cues up our next other item, and I'm going to pass it off to Z to speak to one of those specific projects.
Yeah, thanks, Gunnar. As part of those specific projects, we've actually reached out to a few tech committee members for the pavement management and forecasting project, as well as the goods movement study. So we conducted a few interviews with some engineers from across the metro and those in public works about pavement management strategies and what they do for pavement management within their jurisdiction. In addition, we're also working on the goods movement study, where we're looking at regional truck routes and kind of coordinating where those truck routes are as they cross jurisdictional lines. So as we're compiling the regional truck routes across the metro, we're noticing that some jurisdictions have truck routes, some jurisdictions have truck prohibitions, and some jurisdictions don't have any truck routes at all. And so as part of this outreach process, we'll again reach out to different tech and jurisdictional representatives across the metro in order to coordinate and work on this regional truck route and goods movement study. So you'll hear a bit more from us about that project.
Thank you, Z. Carl, do you have an update?
Yes. So we have a regional trails update. The bicycle pedestrian roundtable meets monthly, and most recently in October, the group met to approve 2 new trails as regional trails as part of the Central Iowa Regional Trails Network. So the Karas Call Trail, which is a 3-mile segment connecting the Carl Boss Trail to the Carlisle Nature Trail, was approved, and also the Grand Prairie Parkway Trail, which connects the Raccoon River Valley Trail southward and Waukee, was also approved as a new Central Iowa Trails regional trail. So as a regional trail, these trails are encouraged to use the trail signage following the communication master plan for the Central Iowa Trails. And if anyone needs any information on that or a copy of the plan, please reach out to me.
Thank you, Carl. Zach, did you have one?
Yeah, I just wanted to an update on where we're at with the carbon reduction program applications. We've sent the funding subcommittee's recommendation to the committee in October. Right before exec and policy, we did receive a letter from the city of Johnston requesting that the committee reconsider the application they had sent that had not been recommended for funding by the funding subcommittee. So the policy committee discussed that at their meeting in October, and ultimately they have sent the recommendation back to the funding subcommittee to re-review and resubmit. So the funding subcommittee will be meeting on November 15th to review the City of Johnston's request and to look at the overall recommendation that they had sent in October. So just wanted to let you know about that update. The plan is to bring back whatever the funding subcommittee discusses to the policy committee meeting on the November 21st date. So we will keep you updated on what happens with that, but just wanted to make you aware of what was going on with the carbon reduction program.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions on that? Okay. And then to cap it all off, I have a question for you all. So at the December meeting, I know that the team leading the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan wants to do an exercise with us. We're getting to the point now where we need to be prioritizing the recommendations that would go into a grant application. And so this is really, I think, the culmination of, gosh, it's probably been a year or more of effort of, identifying the safety trends, identifying solutions, and now it comes down to the prioritization, what actually gets applied for. And like anything, where the money is spent, I know can require some discussion. I'll put it lightly. And so that's why I think that it would be great if we could get together in person to go through those exercises and discuss this, so that we could get some robust discussion on that and have some buy-in before an application is actually generated for those funds. And so wanted to see if people had major concerns with us meeting in person at the December 5th TCC meeting. Hearing no objections, I'll ask maybe staff, do we think that there would be a virtual option, or are we going to just try to hold it 100% in person?
We'd love to have as much public participation or representative participation as possible. What I'll suggest is maybe we send a calendar invite and ask for you to reply to that as to your in-person status. I'm assuming that we'll need to provide a Zoom link. It does provide some nice options, like it does provide us recording abilities, etc. But I think it'd be easier to engage you in a more meaningful way if you are here in person. And I know it just becomes a barrier and a challenge if you're trying to engage with people in the room and online. The people online just invariably don't get the level of engagement that they do in the room. So
that's right.
I would suggest that as a concept.
So maybe, understanding that, some people just, can't physically be present, and, we'd welcome you to listen in, but, the real engagement is going to happen in the room. That's going to be where the most, probably robust discussion is going to be. And so we'd really like to be there, and just an opportunity for us to get together and network a little bit too. So thank you. We look forward to that. Anything else not on the agenda anybody wants to ask or share? Well, thank you, everyone. I will ask for a motion for adjournment in a second, please.
This is Rudy with Waukee. I'll move to adjourn.
May Clive, second.
Thank you, Rudy and Jeff. We will consider that approved, and have a great month, everybody.